light of the stay-at-home movement, kids around the world are stuck in their homes. They're no longer allowed to stretch their legs and minds through normal activities, like going to school, playing with friends, or participating in clubs and sports. We believe books can take you anywhere, from right where you are, and we want to share that magic with kids around the world. Gotham Reads encourages kids to discover the power of imagination through story. Every day, authors and celebrities read books aloud on YouTube, sharing some of their favorite characters and adventures. We want to use this opportunity to educate, entertain, and inspire kids who may be feeling a little stuck. We'll use these books to empower young minds and transport them beyond reality into their wildest dreams. To guide us along this journey, we've brought together some of the greatest storytellers in the world. So open your imagination and get ready to explore.
Hi everyone, my name is Lin Oliver, and I am a children's book author of over 40 books, including my latest with my partner Henry Winkler, Alien Superstar. And I'm also the executive director of the Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators, an organization of over 25,000 authors, illustrators, and publishers of children's books. And I'm here today to moderate a panel about Gotham Reads, which is an incredible new program that is co-produced by the Gotham Group and also by First Avenue Machine. So joining me today are our panelists, and I will give them each a very brief introduction and have them tell you a little bit about themselves. First, we have Tony Diterlizzi and Angela Diterlizzi. And Tony is a renowned children's book author and illustrator. With Holly Black, he co-created the Spiderwick Chronicles, which everybody knows from both the books and the motion picture. He won a Caldecott Honor for The Spider and the Fly. He's created many wonderful chapter books, like the Wundla trilogy. And Tony, tell us a little bit about what you're working on now. What's your latest project of passion?
Oh, thank you, Lynn. I'm working on a sequel to my 2007, was that when it came out?
Gosh, 2007 now.
Book Kenny and the Dragon, and it's a new middle grade book called Kenny and the Book of Beasts, and that'll be out in September.
That's great. We so need middle grade, wonderful middle grade fiction. There's really a crying need for it in the marketplace. Angela Diterlizzi is a picture book author and creator, and her picture books are wonderful. And Tony is the presenter of Angela. Her picture books are wonderful. My particular favorite is Just Add Glitter. And there's also The Magical Yet. And is it Some Bugs or Some Bugs?
Ooh.
It's Some Bugs.
Okay, Some Bugs. So Angela, tell us a little bit about your current project, what you're working on that you're passionate about now.
Currently, so The Magical Yet just came out. So I've been doing a lot of support for The Magical Yet, of doing virtual visits with schools and libraries and classrooms. And then I have a new book that's going to be coming out next year called Have You Seen This Book?
Yes, let's hope we all have. Let's hope and Angela and Tony are married and they have a daughter. And wouldn't you like to grow up in their fabulous house full of art and music and fantasy and stories and creatures? We also have Henry Winkler. Henry Winkler needs no introduction, but I'm going to do it anyway. Henry is an actor, a director, a producer, and an author of children's books. Henry and I have collaborated on, what is it, Henry? Is it 34 children's books?
35.
Okay. So he, of course, is known by every human being who hasn't been in a cave for the last 50 years for creating the character of the Fonz on Happy Days, and now for creating the character of Gene Cousineau on the hit series Barry. And in between that, he's found time to write many children's books with me, to direct films and television, and to produce many television series. Henry, would you like to say something about your latest project of passion?
Well, my latest project of passion. It's getting out the vote. But besides that, it is, we have a new book coming out in October, the Alien Superstar 2. Mm-hmm. And MacGyver is going to start again, production in July. And we start Barry in February, and I love all of those things.
Great, and I think you've been spending some time growing your beard, is that right?
Yes, I feel like Spartacus's dad.
So our next panelist is Selwyn Seyfu Hinds. Hi, Selwyn. Nice to see you. Selwyn is a creative master across so many genres.
Who wrote that?
How about that? He, as a writer, he is currently adapting the amazing novel Washington Black, which I actually read. It's an incredibly powerful novel for Hulu. And he is the go-to sought-after writer for almost every project going on in Hollywood now. So do you want to talk to us a little bit about your most favorite things that you're working on now? I know that you wrote Twilight Zone, Jordan Peele's new version of Twilight Zone for CBS. And you've adapted some classic series. What are you working on now that fills you with passion? And
Sure. Well, Washington Black takes up the largest space. It's this journey of an Afro-Caribbean boy in 1800s from Barbados around the world. It's, shades of Jules Verne, but it's the kind of story I think that will speak so much to where we are now as a society. And it's something that really has my heart in it. I've also written a movie that's likely at some point this is going to direct. He's supposed to be directing it right now, but clearly that's not the world that we live in, called Prince of Cats. Ellen tosses things at me literally every day, so we are in a constant search to figure out what to do next. But the most interesting thing about me is the fact that I'm a dad of a 19-year-old girl, and I'm a DJ, and I'm from the Caribbean. So
what island?
Those are my. Actually from Guyana, the only nation state that is considered a part of the former West Indies, because we used to be a British colony many years ago. So,
well, welcome. It's wonderful to have you, and I have enormous respect for your writing and how relevant it is at this very moment. And speaking of relevant, we have Christina Hammonds Reed, and she is a brand new author. Her debut novel was highly sought after, and finally it was Simon & Schuster who was the winner in this auction, and her novel is called The Black Kids. And Christina, maybe tell us a little bit about it, because it's so relevant at this very moment and when it comes out.
So unfortunately, past is present, right? The novel looks at the 1992 riots. It's the story of a wealthy Black teenager who is forced to really consider who she is and who she wants to be under that backdrop of racial unrest. And it's funny, in talking about the novel, it really does feel like we're reliving that moment.
Kudos to you for perceiving the issue, for writing about it so sensibly, and for bringing it into the public conversation, especially for teens. So great. And that novel is being adapted for the screen by the Gotham Group. And then we have DJ MacHale. Everybody knows, hi DJ, how are you? Everyone knows him as the author of the Pendragon series, which has become a modern classic and sort of a go-to literary event for all kids. He's also the author of the Morpheus trilogy, and also is it Silo Chronicles or is it SYLO Chronicles?
Silo. It's Silo.
Silo. We can put the acronym together. And he is a longtime creator of great television for kids and also great literature for kids, especially focusing on popular series that kids adore. So DJ, what are you into at the moment?
Well, for the longest time, I kind of stepped away from TV a little bit to write books, and I wrote a whole bunch of books, Pendragon being one of them. And I have a new book that I just finished called The Tyrion League, which starts a whole nother middle grade, big adventure type story. But I've kind of snuck back into TV a little bit too. I'm developing a couple of shows, and partly through the Gotham Group, those wonderful folks, I'm getting into animation, and I've never really done that before. I've always done live action. But the amazing thing about animation is that you don't have to worry about budget so much. It's like, I can do whatever we want.
Well, you mean as a writer, yes.
Everyone else would worry about it. But suddenly the things that you say, we can't do that. Like, maybe we can do that. So I'm developing a couple of new series, animated series. So that's been a lot of fun. That's what I'm
wonderful. Up to. Well, we're glad to have you back in television. And then our final two panelists are, and by no means of insignificant importance in this panel are the producers. Ellen Goldsmith-Vein is the CEO and founder of the Gotham Group. Everyone can applaud the Gotham Group here. And the Gotham Group is the only production management company in Hollywood that is solely owned by a woman. So, Ellen,
Yeah.
on sister. And the Gotham Group represents so many of the great creative minds working in film and television, and especially in the family field. And Ellen is also a producer and has produced most recently Stargirl, which is a film for Disney Plus, I think, based on the Jerry Spinelli best-selling novel. She's also produced The Maze Runner. And what else would you like to say about yourself, Ellen?
I just, first of all, want to thank all of you guys for being here because all of you are so important to me in different ways, mostly because I consider you all family. Many of you are clients. Some of you are neighbors. Lynn, I can throw a rock at your house from here. Yeah. But, we're a management production company. We're fortunate enough to be surrounded by brilliant creative minds such as yourselves. We are largely drawn to material as producers that is based on, stories that we love, and that can come from a book, that can come from, a drawing, that can come from, poetry. But we're really best known for doing things in the kids and family space.
Thank you. We'll hear from you in a moment. But before that, I'd just like to introduce Andrew Geller. And Andrew is the executive producer and head of content for First Avenue Machine. So Andrew, tell us just a little bit about First Avenue Machine.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Also, thank you so much for being here. First Ave, we are a production company, really focused a lot on short form, a lot of branded content. We do everything from OK Go music videos to having the Guinness World Record for the smallest stop motion film ever made, that we made moving atoms one at a time to make a movie that you can see on YouTube. We do a ton of digital work, but we also work a lot with Ellen in a joint venture where we're partnering on projects and helping on things like Gotham Reads. So really, really happy to be here.
Great. Okay, so let's dig into the topic. So the topic today is to let everyone know about Gotham Reads, what it is, what it's accomplished, and what its goals are for the future. So Ellen, how about if you kick us off and tell us a little bit about the genesis of Gotham Reads?
Okay, cut to 3 million days ago when suddenly we were all in lockdown. I think we all felt like, what can we do at this point to try to be helpful, particularly in the area of kids and families. And one of the things that we knew that we had access to were brilliant authors and illustrators and creators. And so we sort of set about trying to put together a site where we could gather together all of our authors and illustrators, many who we represent, and then many who we don't, who we were lucky enough to meet through people like you, Lynn, at the Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators, and then, just started reaching out to people who we knew, cared about kids. As Selwyn mentioned, the most important thing in his life and the thing that he's most proud of is his daughter, and I know he cares about children and families. And so we started making phone calls, and literally the first people that I called were Angela and Tony and you, Lynn, and the rest of the people who we're talking to now. And everyone said, yes, I'd be happy to help. But then I thought, God, how are we going to get this done? I realized this is going to be way more difficult than just getting people to say yes. How do we do this? I don't know anything about YouTube. So fortunately, our incredible partners at First Avenue Machine, who really know their way around the branded content space and how to create things from the ground up very quickly, and I mean really quickly, within a couple of hours, started to put together ideas. So I reached out to our publicist, Maggie Begley, who also helped to be able to guide us in terms of what the messaging is that we were putting out. And then, wanted to be able to get, not just through YouTube and the relationships that First Avenue Machine has at YouTube, and through the people who were reading for us in their social media channels, but thought, how can we partner with like-minded organizations? And so obviously the first person who raised their hand and said, would love to be helpful was the Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators, you, Lin, who have done extraordinary things in this space. And, Common Sense Media, another organization that you introduced me to, Save the Children, that my friend Jen Garner had been doing a lot of readings with her friends. But we were sort of doing something different, which was focusing on actual authors and illustrators and writers and directors, as opposed to actors. Now, we do have some actors. Most of them have been in, films that we've produced. So Ali'i Cravalho, who's coming out in a movie that we produced for Netflix based on Matthew Quick's novel, Sort of Like a Rock Star, and who was Moana. She's reading. And so, we've had Kamala Harris, we have Eric Garcetti coming up. So it's been authors, illustrators, and then people that we felt were impactful in certain communities. We just managed to rally a group of, interesting partners together who have supported us through their channels. And then also some of our publishing clients like Simon & Schuster. So it's been an incredibly rewarding experience. It's a big job though, but it's really, every step of the way it's been worth it. And again, I'm just grateful to all of you guys, one, for being here today, but also for your time and your commitment and your passion to this sort of little engine that could project.
Everyone who has a child at home or a grandchild or a niece or a nephew knows what a stressful time this is, and what a crying need there is for parents and gatekeepers, teachers, librarians of every stripe to be able to present stimulation to their kids and also to give them 5 minutes peace. So you're doing a public service in many ways, mental health ways as well as educational. So everybody here has presented a piece on Gotham Reads. So let's start by asking each of you what it is you chose to read and why. Henry, let's start with you.
You and I started a series called Hank Zipser. And when we finished that particular series, we decided to go back in Hank's life, and we started him off in the 2nd grade. And so the book that I decided to read it's a short tale about a long dog. And it is the first time that Hank Zipser finds his puppy. I love my puppies. And this puppy follows him for the next 34 novels. And I read it because I was not able to ever read before. Growing up, I couldn't read. When my children were, when we read to our children, I would fall asleep. My eyes would get very tired. So my wife read, and I acted out the story at the same time. That was my contribution. But reading has been so difficult for me. And now that I can read out loud, it is one of my proudest moments. I have learning challenges, math, spelling, science, reading. In high school, we read A Tale of Two Cities, which I never read. But I would take the book and I would drip water over the pages, and when it dried, it crinkled up. So when I took the book out, it looked like I was beating that book into submission. It looked like I knew. And then everybody was writing in the margins. They were writing about similes and metaphors. And I wrote my name. Reading was really, and still is, not so easy.
So the notion of reading aloud to a child is very meaningful to you.
Very touching to me. And when we travel, you and I, across America, and we go into schools, and I I read one of our, a chapter from one of our stories, we see right there in front of us that they're laughing, or they're listening, or we hold their attention. And it's, I don't know, it's just, I'm over the moon.
Selwyn, what about you? What is it that you chose to read, and why so?
I chose this guy here, On the Night You Were Born by Nancy Tillman. This actually came up in my life right now through my wonderful partner, my girlfriend, whom Ellen knows very well. I wasn't able to sleep the first several weeks of this apocalypse era that we're going through. And one night she gets the brilliant idea that she's going to read like kids' bedtime stories aloud in the bedroom. And she read this one, and it just landed on me. Right. I think part of it was, the book is on the night you were born, and it's about a kind of specificity and a sort of a treatise on the specialness of you, the individual. There was something in that notion and that idea that took me right back to being 30 years old with a newborn, and I just knew at that point that this was the book I had to read, and seems like people liked it.
Oh, that's great. It's so appropriate now at a time where human life is at risk in all kinds of ways to reinforce the message that each human life is unique and special.
Yes, we are not disposable entities.
Right.
And I think this book helps to, communicate that message to young people.
So moving around here, let's go to Tony Diterlizzi. Tony, what did you select to read and why?
I read my picture book, Ted, which I should grab it. Let me grab it. It's right here. Be right back.
We get to check to see that you're wearing.
We mostly picked this book at the time because this banner actually is a roll of toilet paper, and we thought that everyone would appreciate that. This is a book that's nearly 20 years old. It's about a little boy who has an imaginary friend, which is this giant pink monster Muppet thing, and his workaholic father. And the twist of the story is that the imaginary friend is actually there for the dad. And it's not based on my dad. It's actually me. It's actually me having a conversation with myself. It's the child spirit in me having a conversation with the semi-responsible version of me, and where imagination falls. And that often happens with the books that I try to create. They're really me trying to process what's going on either in my life or in the world that I see. And so it's always, a lot of times kids are like, what's your favorite book that you wrote? And if I'm on tour, my favorite book is whatever book I'm currently But truth be told, Ted has always had a special place in my heart. So it was the one I thought would be a good one to share. Plus you get to do silly voices. And when we read to our daughter, I always do really silly voices, or I try.
And Angela, what did you select to read and why?
Well, I, like Henry, grew up I was a very reluctant reader. I had difficulties with listening comprehension and reading comprehension. And so I actually didn't read much at all. But the thing that I did have where stories were so important to me was in music. I heard stories in the lyrics of Dolly Parton, who I wanted to be so desperately when I was growing up. And so when I hear stories, I hear them in rhyme, much like music. So I read my book, Some Bugs, which, Tony, if you want to grab that one too, you're welcome to.
I will, yes.
Thank you, honey. And it is a book written in rhyme about some bugs, as you mentioned earlier, Lynn. And with these beautiful illustrations by Brendan Wenzel, I wanted to invite kids to connect with the natural world when they couldn't connect with the world in their classrooms or with their friends or with some of their family that they weren't able to see. So it really invited them to go out and explore the world around them. And so, thank you, honey.
You like that?
So that's why I wanted to share Sunbugs, is to kind of get people out of their spaces, out from being in front of their screens, and out in their yards, kind of exploring and connecting with nature.
So Christina, what did you choose to read and why?
So I chose We Don't Eat Our Classmates, which is a very funny book. Super funny. It combines things that I love, which is dinosaurs. I, like most children, went through a dinosaur phase, but also it's this beautifully illustrated book that's very inclusive. You see all different kinds of kids within the space of the pages. Let me see if I can find some of them. So you look at his classroom, and there's so many different kinds of children. And I just think that's a beautiful thing in terms of diversity is important, and also inclusivity is important within children's books. And the story itself is about a little dinosaur who comes to this classroom as a different person and has to sort of learn how to be within that space. So it's like this perfect metaphor for being different in these spaces while also being really, really funny, because she keeps having to learn not to eat her classmate. I wish I had had it read to me as a child, but I'm happy it exists in the world right now. And if you haven't read it, you should. It's very entertaining. I grew up in the LA area, but my parents would actually drive to a bookstore in Santa Barbara to find books that reflected us in the pages. So there was one called Eat Up Gemma and Mafaro's Beautiful Daughters, but at the time, back in the 90s, they had to go out of their way to do so, or drive to different parts of the city. And so I think it's actually lovely now when I see diversity reflected in books and see that kids can see all different kinds of people reflected in their pages, because that wasn't the case for many of us growing up.
Really a profound thing. And now, of course, the movement in children's books is to publish diverse books, but it's been a very long time coming. And DJ, that brings us to you. What is it that you chose to read and why?
I read, that I just happened to grab the last second, my picture book, The Monster Princess. This book is very important to me for a number of reasons. One is it's the only picture book I've written. Normally I write for much older kids. If I'd read one of those books, we'd still be here reading it. Book 8, here we go. I'd be like Jimmy Stewart and Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. Reading aloud has always been very important to me. I had a mother, thank God bless her, who read to me all the time. We didn't have the means to have a big library of books. We just didn't, but our own library. So we would go to the library, we'd pick up books together. I can still hear her voice reading to me. And as I think back on it now, her voice is very calm and talk like this, which isn't normally her. And I'm thinking now, it's because she was exhausted. And she had to read to me at the end of the day. But like, all right. But I have a daughter. My daughter is 17 now. And I read to her since she was born 2 months premature. So I read to her before her birthday. I mean, that's how much reading meant to me. And there was one day where she was in preschool, maybe 3-4 years old, and I got a call, and the preschool said, Keaton, that's her name, she just ran into the wall, which I checked her out, and she was fine. The next day, she put on this princess dress. I believe it was Cinderella. I still have that thing. And I took this picture of her. So here's this cute little girl with a tiara and a little thing in a princess dress with a hunking black eye that looked like Rocky after the 15th round. Something clicked, and I thought, little girls have more than one side. They like to be pink and purple and sparkly and all that kind of stuff, but they like to mix it up as well too. So I came up with this character of Lala, the monster princess, who is about this little monster girl who lives underground. And she aspires to be something less than what she is. She aspires to be a princess who wears nice gowns and goes to the ball. And this girl is awesome. She is active and she's outgoing. She's brave and all this kind of stuff. But she wants to be a princess. So the story's about her trying to be a princess. Things go horribly wrong. And over the course, she realized, it's like, I'm actually pretty cool the way I am. I don't need to be wearing all these things. So it's really a kind of empowerment, girl power kind of thing. And I also wrote it, Angela, I wrote it in verse because I found when reading to my daughter for all those countless nights. That's what was fun to me, is reading it in verse, especially when they're very young and they're not reading, that they can complete the sentences and they know where it's going, and so they can look at the. So that's where this book came from, and that's why I chose to read it for Gotham Reads.
So I'm wondering for each of you, if your parents read to you, or if you read to your children or nieces or nephews.
I would just like to say my parents read the Riot Act. That was
it. I heard that story too.
There were German Jews. There was no story to read there. No.
I can jump in on that. I mean, my mother did read to me, and I have to believe, besides just kind of instilling the joy of reading and of storytelling and of stories, which I have to believe in some way, shape, or form played into what I ended up doing for a living. And I translated that to my daughter, who again is now 17. And one of the great joys I have in my life now is that, there's not a lot that I can have in common with a 17-year-old girl at this point. I know a lot of us may have been through that. Selwyn's, right? You may have been through that right now. But the one common the thing we have in common are stories. And drama and characters, and we could be fighting about God knows what, and we do. When we start talking about stories and about how stories play out and what you like and why did this work, suddenly we connect on a level that is so fabulous. And I believe that goes far back to when she was negative 2 months old. That's when I started to read to her, and so I'm the poster child for read to your kids, both for me and for my kid too.
And Selwyn, I know that you mentioned that you had a 19-year-old daughter. Was reading to her an important tradition in your family at all?
Yes, like DJ. I mean, I started reading to her maybe 2 months, 3 months before she was born. That just began that routine. And for me, it started. I spent most of my childhood growing up with my grandmother. And she used to be a teacher, and her invaluable contribution was teaching me to read at a really young age, right? So this is me in the early 1970s in Guyana. We don't have television, but what we have are books, tons of books. And she had this library in the house, took up a whole back wall. It was just filled with everything you can imagine. And I don't know, much from age 6 to 10, I would just play in that library like it was my personal playground every day, and I read everything. I mean, I was a gigantic nerd, right? So she had like the encyclopedia, Britannica, which I've read cover to cover, A through Z, 1,000 times. I read a ton of comics, early on as a kid, and also Ghana was a really sort of, again, as a colony, it's taking cultural information from many sources. So we have a huge Indian population. So I'm reading tons of books about, adventures about the Hindu, pantheon. So it's a really cross-cultural mix that always helped me develop the thing I treasure today, which is this notion that stories are our communication, it's our language. Because when I immigrated to the United States, I was a 14-year-old in Brooklyn, in a very different Brooklyn that exists today in the mid 80s, a very scary place in many ways. And I made fast and instant friends because, and this is during a time when, the world has no IG, has no Facebook, it's disconnected and separate. But we became fast friends right away because we were all fans of Chris Claremont's X-Men, right?
Yeah.
So here I am off the plane with my weird Caribbean accent, and I know all about, Logan and the adamantium, and we're like, oh my God, this kid knows everything. So that's really how I became part of this country. And so I continued it with my daughter, who, like DJ, is not a writer, but she's still a storyteller. She's been a dancer, ballet and modern since she was in kindergarten at the Ailey School. And so she tells her stories, her narrative through that expression. So hopefully that chain will continue on.
That's amazing. It's amazing how bonding across cultures stories are.
Yeah.
They allow us, in fact, to speak the same language even when we don't. Mm-hmm. Tony and Angela, I know you have a daughter. She's probably beyond the age that you read to her, but I imagine there's a lot of reading going on in your house, reading and drawing.
She's 13, and she's actually not above being read to. Tony, I mean, we've read to her since before she was born. The day that she came home, we have a photo of her fully engaged and locked into a board book copy of The Very Hungry Caterpillar. And so that just continued. Every night it was choose three board books, choose 3 picture books, go pick chapter books. We were always constantly reading with her. In fact, now if she has a tough day, she'll even still ask me, Mom, can we read Lily's Purple Plastic Purse by Kevin Hankes?
Yeah.
There's a line that says, today was a difficult day and tomorrow will be better. And so we still have that moment where we cozy up and connect with each other. And now, of course, she's reading The Book Thief now for school. But, we will usually read the same books that she's currently reading, and then we'll have discussions about those stories.
Christina, do you think that reading to children has a direct correlation on their imagination, on their ability and desire to be creative?
Oh, I think so. I was read to a lot. My mom is an educator. She's just like a dissertation shy of her PhD in education. So that was always super important in our household. And I grew up reading voraciously to the point where they couldn't send me to my room when I was bad because it wasn't punishment. So I think it has a huge correlation in terms of you open up your worldview when you read, right? Like reading builds so much empathy and it expands your world beyond your own. It's like a wonderful way to travel when you're young. You just see how different people live all over the place and what their struggles are. And I think it's just like this wonderful magical thing that as you carry yourself into adulthood, you take that with you. So whether it's being a writer, whether it's being a dancer, whether it's being a fine artist, like all of that is so grounded in storytelling and so grounded in that early building of your imagination. So it's the building blocks, right? So yeah, I think reading definitely has a huge impact on that. And it's also kind of like a nice little blanket, right? I think what Tony and Angela were saying, where if you've had a rough day, being able to cuddle up with a book or to escape the world is also valuable in terms of using your imagination and being able to go to another place in times of turmoil, either if it's in your personal life or if it's internationally, right?
Right, and certainly at this moment in history, the service that you have all provided for Gotham Reads to provide an opportunity for storytelling that will either help deepen a child's understanding of what's going on or help them escape what's, the troubles of what's going on. It's what a valuable contribution. We're coming to the end of our time, and I want to be able to hear from Andrew about the future of Gotham Reads. But to summarize, I thought maybe I would ask each of you to in maybe 1 or 2 or most 3 words, to say what feeling you would hope a child would experience after watching Gotham Reads, after watching a story being read to them. What state would you hope that they would be in? Because when you read to a child at night, the state you're hoping for is unconsciousness, right? So this is really kind of a different thing. So what would you hope for? Who would like to begin?
I'll jump in first, so in case someone will say what I'm going to say, and then I won't have anything to say. I think it's possibility. I mean, if you look at all of the books that were read for Gotham Reads, they're all over the map. It's wonderful. And that's the joy of all sorts of books. And so if any kid or adult can listen to those stories being read, there's so many possibilities, so many avenues, so many types of people, so many different types of conflict, so many types of resolution. So if you could just see the world of what is possible and what can be possible.
Selwyn, you're smiling, and that's my cue to call on you.
Was that your answer, Selwyn?
Mine is my smile gets me in trouble. No, mine is close. I would say the word travel, right? Because I think about reading in general. I think about these books, and I think about the idea of traveling out of yourself, out of your skin, out of your place, out of your context. Because that was hugely important to me as a kid, right? To go inside this mind palace that I had constructed and imagine and live something else, something different. And I think that is such a special thing, such a special aspect of what it is to be a child, that I hope that we've contributed to their ability to close their eyes and go away, travel somewhere.
Great. Henry, what about you?
My thought is joy. when just the wonder of the joy of listening to a story, and then it takes you away. And I just want to say, I hope they have the same joy I do in listening to each one of you and your stories and your thoughts. I'm so happy to have met you even in a little square.
Little Brady Bunch.
All right, Christina, what about you?
I think to build upon that would be comfort. And I think that there's such a comfort in reading in terms of escaping everything, but also the comfort of like learning new things and taking from that what you will, and knowing that you're now armed with something else to go into life with.
Tony and Angela, each, even though you're married, you are a separate answer is required by each.
I would say connection with the authors or the creators or the illustrators of the books that have been written for you to share with you. Connecting with the windows that you see into the worlds beyond yours in the pages, or the mirror if it's reflecting your own experience in that book, or the connection to the escape hatch that book provides for you, like Christina was saying. Connection to me is so important in all of my stories, because I'm writing for myself, but the most meaningful moment is thinking when I'm connecting with the reader that I'm not there to see experiencing the story that I've written.
I was literally going to say connection. And I think because we talked,
You've been married too long.
But we were talking about it earlier about different stories and how they can transcend time and space and place and generation. And they do bring us all together. And including all of us here today, talking about the joy of reading and stories and what books we like. And geez, we need that connection now more than ever.
And I think, that is Comic-Con in and of itself, is people who want to feel connected with others who love the same thing that they do. That's why, 250,000 people gathered together in one space to feel connected to one another. And I'm so thankful that I got to connect, and we got to connect with you guys today.
All right, and I guess for me, the final word is empathy, that books teach you, show you how to walk in somebody else's shoes, which is really the only way you can, it's a direct path to love if you start with empathy. So Andrew, tell us where Gotham Reads is headed.
Well, I will do that, but first I'll say inspired, because this was great to hear all of your stories today. So thank you for sharing that. And I would say that this has been very inspirational to hear. For the future of Gotham Reads, we're really going to be shifting focus coming into the fall to program books that are going to be helpful for kids that are still at home while having to go back to school. So the goal is really going to be working in books that fit within curriculums that teachers can point to be a resource for educators going into the fall, and trying to kind of make this adjustment a little bit easier for students. So that's sort of the goal here in the coming months, and we're really excited about new books and more readers, and hopefully we can have some of you all back again.
Ellen, do you have a final word of inspiration and farewell?
No pressure.
Wrap it on up, Ellen.
You guys are the inspiration. What else is there for me to say? You've covered everything. You are extraordinary human beings, and this is a rare and wonderful thing that we're all doing, I think, collectively. So thank you very much, Lynn. You're amazing.
Well, thank you. I was just waiting for you to say that, but thank God we're ending on that note. Listen, so much of my life is involved in children's books and children's film and television and creating entertainment for children. And something that people always say is creating for children is just the same process as creating for adults, only you have to do it better. And I think that what we've seen here is an example of that. Each of you has really approached your selection thoughtfully and personally and with great emotion, and that's why we all feel so inspired, because you put that kind of thought and dedication and heart into it. So Ellen and Andrew, thank you for creating Gotham Reads. We hope that it serves a function during this stressful time and provides inspiration, comfort, empathy, connection, joy. Did I hit every word? for everybody who's watching it. So thank you for being with us and enjoy the rest of Comic-Con. Everyone say goodbye.
Hi, thank you.
Bye.